from the KBTV Action Center in Denver, this is 9 News, #1 in Colorado.
Hello, everyone. Frontier's Atlanta-bound Flight 194 only had a 50-50 chance of making a safe emergency landing at Stapleton Airport earlier this evening. The Boeing 737 had blown both tires on the left landing gear during the takeoff from Denver at 3:45 this afternoon. The pilot had flown around for 2 hours trying to burn off fuel before attempting the emergency landing, and it was, in a word, beautiful. Incredibly smooth. All 97 passengers and 5 crewmen safe. Ken Schreiner and photographer Butch Montoya were on the runway at Stapleton seconds after the aircraft touched down.
As the crippled Boeing 737 came in, the problem became easy to see. The tires on the right, the jet's left landing gear, are deflated, blown out upon takeoff from Stapleton nearly 2 hours earlier. As the plane came to rest, emergency vehicles rushed to the scene. There was fear that sparks from the bare metal landing gear scraping the runway could touch off leaking fuel. Up close, you see what was left of the wheel after a 100-mile-an-hour drag across several thousand feet of hot concrete. While mechanics and firefighters moved in to secure the plane, pilot Ernest Cook explained how the blowout happened.
On the takeoff roll, we had initiated rotation, and nose gear came off, and the airplane was beginning to fly. And we heard a loud bang, and it just kind of dropped on the left side. And I knew then that it was one of the tires. I didn't know both of them were gone.
He did an absolutely perfect job of flying this airplane. And I'm sure any one of the other captains that we have flying with us would have done equally as sound a job. But he's the one that had to do it, and he did a beautiful job. Thank you. Congratulations. Appreciate it.
The 97 passengers and 5 crew members were taken off the plane and went directly into mobile lounges. This passenger took the more scenic route. They all were taken to a waiting plane where Rick Salinger picks up the story.
Anxious relatives watched on as the still shaking yet greatly relieved passengers transferred to Delta Flight 1170, Atlanta bound. A few elected to get off in Denver. Enough flying, they said, for one day. Among them, a nervous young boy with a blood pressure gauge on his arm. Those on board knew from the start that something was wrong during the takeoff.
It was a loud sound as if we had hit something, and as if we'd hit something. And then right directly after that, it was a big, and it sounded like a flat tire. Immediately I said, did we have a flat tire?
She says a cockpit crew member went to the back of the plane to survey damage. How did the people on board react to the terrifying situation?
They were real quiet, and they took it calmly. Everybody was kind of tight-lipped for a while. It was a white knuckler for a long time. And
he says 5 minutes into the flight, they were told what had happened. 2 hours later, the tense landing.
When it rolled to a stop, they told us to put our heads down and to grab our legs, and then they kept yelling to keep your head down, and that frightened us because I'm sure they meant it as a safety precaution, but the more they said, keep your head down, we thought something had gone wrong, and a lot of the passengers said the same thing.
Finally, the plane came to a halt with a cheer. Delta Airlines would not allow the media on board their plane to talk with the passengers who had transferred, so we purchased tickets to Atlanta and got on. The passengers we spoke with were frightened by the experience, yet grateful.
Wonderful. We sure have someone up there thanking him.
No doubt they were tense as the plane prepared for takeoff. And so finally, it was off to Atlanta with the cliche, better late than never, meaning oh so much. Rick Salinger, 9 News.
So the passengers, most of them, are off to Atlanta, and all of the Frontier crew members are either home now or on their way. Pilot Dwayne Cook of Dallas wants to take the first available flight home. First Officer Jim Reimer of Denver never really left. Both men talked about their experience at a news conference tonight, and Paula Woodward was there.
They called it a routine landing after they'd had a chance to think about it, said First Officer Jim Reimer.
I told them I'd seen rougher landings in strong winds, so it really wasn't too dramatic.
The plane came in low for the landing, Pilot Cook saying he'd never had a problem like this before, but that the long hours in the training simulator paid off.
Well, it was a normal routine landing until we touched down on the runway. We followed the established our training department procedures for landing, airspeed and sink rate. Till we got down, we had already discussed what we were going to do in case the gear did collapse.
The plane, only a month and a half old. The tires are inspected after each flight by maintenance people and the crew, so no one knows yet why the tires blew. The pilot said he decided against foam on the runway. He didn't feel there was potential for a fire, said foam was never a serious consideration. They made it. And when they talked with the passengers once they were down,
Well, I feel like a country preacher. I think they tried to wear my hand out.
they were tired when they met with the media. They were also, they said, happy it worked out so well. Paula Woodward, 9 News.
Our computer tells us the Boeing 737 has an impressive safety record, mainly marred by that tragic crash in Washington, D.C. in January. The Air Florida 737 dropped into the Potomac River shortly after takeoff. 78 people died. Just last month, a Nordair Limited 737 made an emergency landing in Omaha after an oil problem forced the crew to shut down one engine. 120 aboard, no injuries. And in February of last year, a Frontier 737 made an unscheduled stop at Ellsworth Air Force Base in Rapid City, South Dakota. Its wing flaps failed, no injuries among the 83 people aboard.
Still to come, tonight's heavy rain.